Hello everyone and welcome to Meeple Leaf Reviews. I'm Jeffrey Weber and today I'm joined by
David Mencken.
And today we're going to be doing a Agra review. He has played the game mostly,
Only with you.
And I played it mostly with him. We've actually got to play it a ton, and then we kept discussing the game and going deeper and deeper into the game. So I was like, well, let's just do a review of the game together.
And I'm really honored. This is my first review that I've done with you, Jeffrey, so I'm looking forward to it. And I guess I've played the game 6 times with you, so all my points of view will be 2-player with you, Jeffrey.
Yeah, and same with me. It's all 2-player, and I've played it 8 times so far.
And so he'll be providing the winner's perspective, and I'll be providing the loser's perspective. So it'll be a well-rounded.
You get that 2 sides of the coin here.
Exactly.
So let's just jump in. Agra is a Euro game. It's a worker placement style game where you're going to be producing different goods and processing them to more valuable goods. And then you're going to be delivering them to a bunch of different places around the board. The Emperor wants it for his birthday. Different guilds want different goods, as well as notables along the river are going to want goods that you're going to be delivering. So it's basically, in essence, a very simple worker placement production delivery game.
Correct. And some of the deliveries, the rewards that you're going to get along the way, or in-game bonuses, are going to have some area influence and control components to them, which will be pretty cool. And there's also some neat action point allowance that goes on with some of the secondary actions, which we'll get into later, which is some of our favorite parts of the game.
Yeah.
So seeing that this is I'll jump to the conclusion here, is I love this. It's just a perfect Euro as far as I'm concerned. So why don't we talk about the thinly veiled theme as well, like any perfect Euro should have. Okay,
yeah.
So we have Akbar the Great, and he's throwing this. The game's set in India, and he's throwing himself a big party. So all these notables and emissaries are coming from all across the country to celebrate his birthday with him. But we're these, plucky landowners, and we want to use this opportunity as a chance to rise in prestige and esteem amongst the notables and and Akbar the Great himself.
Right.
So lucky for us, we're actually landowners, and on our land we happen to grow turmeric, we happen to grow cotton, we happen to have a little forest that we can harvest for wood, and we also have a sandstone quarry. Now I just want to stop right there for a second. When I was reading through this, did you not think then, if I have all this stuff on my land, how come I'm not a notable? Because that seems like a pretty nice plot of land.
Yeah, it does. Well, to be honest, when I read through the rulebook, I kind of just skip over those sections.
Oh, I like to, usually I'm pretty good at squeezing theme out of the smallest of wooden cubes. But frankly speaking, for this one is a little bit difficult because you have those 4 basic goods that you're going to extract from your own plot of land, which is actually shared on the common board. And from that, you're going to use them to upgrade and trade and process goods so that you can deliver them to these notables and to Akbar himself. Okay, we'll talk about theme later, but that's the theme of the game. If you want,
that's the setting.
That's the setting. That's the setting of the game. So why don't we just jump into our overall impressions?
I really enjoy the game as well. I think for me, the thing that pulls me in the most is the secondary actions and how many there are, and the multiple ways that you can combine them together to get what you need done achieved throughout your turn.
Yeah, and for me, this is a near-perfect information Euro. There's only one piece of hidden information. There's no randomness through cards or anything like this. And I really enjoy the puzzle that presents itself and the cascading decisions that you can make. And a lot of people will balk at all the decisions that are made. That's one of the biggest cons against this game, is that they say, well, I can do the same thing 5 different times, where I think it's quite clear within an overall strategic framework, there's really one way to do things best.
Yeah. It's about picking what is the best for you, because there is multiple ways to do the same thing, but it's not all equal. It's not like there are 5 equal ways of doing something. You got to tease out those efficiencies here and there in the game.
Well, now let's jump to components.
So now let's talk about the components. I think the quality of them is really nice. The wood is really chunky pieces. The artwork is very beautiful. The board is
stunning, and it was so cool about this artwork as well. The back side of the board has
just the art,
which some people would argue that the art itself on the player side of the board is so subtle that they both look the same. But we were kind of joking we should show the back side of the board and say Agra, the legacy game.
And
you put stickers on and you flip it over, and after 8 plays, this is what it looks like with the actual other side of the board. But it's stunning. The artwork is absolutely stunning.
Now, I will mention about the artwork and how subtle some of the iconography, especially for the processing path, can be a bit difficult to tease out on your first game as you're learning. But then once you get through that first game or second game, I think it kind of fades into the background and you know where each thing upgrades to. But it can be a little bit of a hindrance in that first game.
And even the upgrades too, that's going to come with time. Like, they make good sense. Like, even on the top when you're on the sandstone production chain. So basically you get the 4 basic goods and they can be upgraded into, there's a chain of 3 processed goods that are beyond it for a total of 16 goods. And you even have like the statue. He comes from like the big block of stone, and some people say, well, I don't understand how brick goes to statue. I'm like, well, no, that's a block of stone that the guy goes in and carves out. So once you actually start tying in some of the actual thematic elements of this goes to that, it makes intuitive sense, what you want on there. The one thing I will say is because of the art, I did have some problems sometimes following them, and in addition, it makes your pieces pop a little bit more. So I like that as well. It provides some contrast. But that being said, is then if we go to the what's that thing called where you put all the tilted
like the delivery board or the Emperor delivery board.
Yeah, what did you think of that?
I did not like that. I played it the very first time. So the Emperor delivery board is slanted, and it has little slots for you to put your pieces in. So the wooden pieces actually are cut on an angle on one side so they can sit flat on that thing. It's just so fiddly, especially the guild influence tokens are these tall, skinny pieces of wood. And as you're got big meat claws and you're trying to move them, you knock them over and then they fall down and then they knock other things down. So I played it one time with it actually in this slanted position, and every other game I laid it flat. I didn't think that was necessary for it to be slanted. I think that's kind of a one misstep with the production here.
Well, and given how bright these wooden chunks are as well, whenever I look at it, I think it looks like a lipstick display counter with all these little tips starting to point out, especially when we play it flat like that. So yeah, that is one thing that people have complained about in this particular game. The other thing is the money bag. Let's talk about that.
So during the game, your money is supposed to be secret, and they give you this little felt bag to put your money in. Again, I've never put my money in the bag. I kind of just put my money on the table and lay the cloth bag over it because a couple reasons. Number one, you're going to need to be spending money throughout the game. So always having to go in and fish out the right amount of coins would be a real pain, and would actually
especially with those big meat hooks you were talking about earlier.
Those meat claws.
So basically, all the components work really well for people with small hands.
Yes.
Yeah, but if you got Jeffrey hands, beware.
Yeah, I think if you actually played it that way, I think that would extend the playtime even more because trying to fish out the right amount. Plus, we've only ever played 2-player, and we found where the lower denomination money chips were actually running low. So if you have to be chipping up your money in that bag constantly, that's again another thing that just takes extra time from having to reach in. So just put the money on the table, put the bag over it, you're fine.
And arguably, what they could have done as well was just player screens would have done the trick for me. That would have been great. But, let's go back to this theme. Maybe that because now we're trading with the notables and we're selling things, maybe it makes sense in the market. We got a little pouch of money.
So I think this is where you kind of want to take function over theme.
Especially in a game where theme is pretty thinly veiled as it is. Okay, and the other thing is I was fortunate enough to have Jeffrey teach me the game and walk me through the game. So I never actually had to deal with rule books or anything like that. You just took care of all of that. So how was that?
So the rule book, after I read it, I immediately thought this is probably one of the best rule books that I had ever read. I think it did a really good job of introducing the concepts at the beginning of the rule book before actually going into the rules, and I liked that about the game. The iconography, there's little references to what everything does on the board, so you don't have to be flipping back and referencing all the time. And for the things that are kind of unique, the notable abilities and the favorite tiles, there is a reference sheet in the back of the rulebook that you can easily go and reference. So it was overall really good rulebook enabled to learn the game. I didn't have to go to BGG once to kind of find anything.
Right. In my experience, just watching you, is anytime there's in play questions that you may have had, they were answered immediately like that when I see you needed to do them. So it looked quite good. And I'm sorry, Jeffrey, I did skip ahead a little bit here. Did you want to go back and talk a little bit about the thematic immersion and integration?
So when I talk about theme, I kind of break it down into two sections. Immersion, how much do I feel like I'm transported to that setting, that area? And then the other one is integration. How well do the mechanisms mimic the theme? So in this game, like you said, the theme is kind of thinly veiled. I think that's when I'm playing, I don't feel like I'm in the setting. I don't feel like I'm in India producing these things because I'm so immersed in the mechanisms of the game.
Right.
I'm immersed in the mechanisms. I'm not immersed in the theme, which is perfectly fine for this type of game.
Well, I've been kind of saying several times already that the theme is pretty. It's a light dusting on top of a beautiful game with awesome mechanisms. But that being said, if this was a theme based in space or had zombies or anything else, chances are I wouldn't play it. So the theme really speaks to the Euro gamer in me. So like, kudos to that. But never once do I ever feel like, okay, Billy over here in the Warrior Guild or whatever, the Red Guild, he is coming into town and he needs some curry and some a new jacket for him to stay warm so he could look presentable at Akbar the Great's party. So I should go and deliver that to him so I can improve my prestige with him. Never once did that storyline ever cross my mind. It was more like, okay, the token's over here. I need to deliver these two things. How do I get there to there? What mechanisms can I shift and apply so that I can get that dunk, 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 boing, dung, points, check, done.
Yeah.
So I never, but that being said is, so that's the actual thematic immersion. So I don't think it's fair to say neither one of us felt immersed.
Right.
However, the fact that they've chosen this theme and then they had different mechanisms associated within that theme, did you feel that they made sense?
I think the integration of the theme worked really well. I think the when you're building something, getting a lot of different materials or more valuable materials makes it easy to build things. Yeah. The abilities of the different notables kind of make sense with what they do. The herbalist allowing you to move your farmers around, or perhaps get better at meditating. Throughout the game.
And we talked about this a little bit because at first when we were discussing this, Jeffrey goes like, "Why does it make sense that you got to go to the herbalist so that you can meditate?" I'm like, "Whoa, Jeffrey, we live in in Canada, the land of where marijuana is about to become legal. Right. What do you mean you don't know how you can go to a herbalist and relax a little bit?" He's like, "Oh."
I guess that makes sense now.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense. So I guess then we should dive into the actual gameplay here and talk about the actual meat of the game. And so I'll let you take over here and I'll piggyback when I can.
So number one, the main thing in this game is worker placement, but it's not a traditional worker placement game where you're going to be trying to get more workers throughout the game. You're given a bunch at the beginning, and you don't really block any areas on the board. The decision that you force your opponent to have to make, though, is if they go to a action space where you have a worker standing, they're giving you an extra favor, or maybe an extra 2 favor, depending on your meditation track. So it forces someone to have to decide, do I really want to take this action because I might be giving my opponent a benefit rather than costing me anything?
And on the flip side, even if you're the person who originally put your worker out in that space, you have another decision to make before your opponent may kick you out. You can still then use that worker and lay them down to get meditation points, which is another another currency within the game. And so you still have some decisions because by doing that, by laying him down, now your opponent can come in and take that spot to no benefit to you.
Right.
So you actually have that other layer in another turn.
Yeah, that decision of who do I lay down? Who do I think my opponent is not going to visit this turn? Yeah. I'll lay them down because I'll keep the other person standing, so I might get an extra benefit out of it.
And then you got to make that decision. By laying him down, I can no longer have the opportunity to get favor, but I'm getting meditation. So then you got to think of the currencies of the game. Do I want meditation points because I can do this and this and this, and maybe I'm high in my meditation track, or is favor more preferable to me to do different things? So maybe I'll try to earn those tokens as well.
Yeah. The other thing that I really like about the game, and was actually one of the things that first interested me in the game, was how the resources are produced.
Yeah.
So you have a little player board and you have these farmers, and it's kind of like a give-take. They kind of go on this little sliding production wheel. So you can get more of one good, but it's at the cost of another good.
Mm-hmm.
So you can manipulate those around each turn to kind of, depending on what you want to produce, or you could even remove these blocking markers, which give you a permanent increase to your production of different goods. So I really like that. Hey, I'm focusing on this kind of resource this game. I'm just going to make that worth a lot. But then I'm going to hinder my other production. So it might take me a while to switch gears if I need to switch gears throughout the game.
Sure, and you know what? This is an interesting point, because this is one of the hurdles I had in my first few plays. I went into this game thinking, okay, I got these production chains that I need to start with basic goods and upgrade them, and I had a very linear way to approach this game. So cotton moves into cloth and to jackets, and sandstone moves into the bricks and the statues. And I had this very linear approach to it. So when I was looking at this production line, I was extremely linear too, and thinking, okay, I need to produce more of this, so I'm going to get rid of those. I'll move my worker one way or another. And I wasn't considering the additional actions that you have, where you can actually start swapping goods of equal value, or using favor or meditation to actually upgrade goods. Yeah. And then you can actually start moving goods from one linear chain
just wherever you want.
Wherever you want. And so I never appreciated that until like several plays in. And so that I put too much emphasis on that resource production. Sometimes it's like, well, wait a second, I'm just going to make a boatload of cotton and I'm going to get what I need. And you did that very effectively in our playthrough. Yeah. And so it's a really neat part of the game. I completely agree. But what's also neat is then you can actually start exploiting by expanding out, exploiting one particular resource to get pretty much anything you want on the board.
Yeah, I'm going to trade in all this cotton that I'm making to get what I need rather than producing it myself.
Exactly. In the first couple of games, I was always so focused on producing, processing, delivering.
Yeah. The other really cool thing that I like about games is when there's asymmetry. Now, when you start off in this game, you're the same as everyone else, but you can build an asymmetry into your play based on these different notables that you'll be delivering to, and if you deliver the most to them, when their contract is complete, you get the card, and each card has a special ability that might lean you more in one way or another, might maybe accent the strategy that you're going for. So I really like that ability to kind of maybe pick and choose the special abilities that you want throughout the game, and then you got to work to get them.
Right, but it's not just you're building up this asymmetry of these bonuses, but it's also building up your status within different guilds as well when you deliver them to them. So you have some conflicting things you need to decide when you're starting to build up your engine, if you will, or the different choices.
So the last kind of thing I want to talk about with mechanisms to highlight here is probably my most enjoyable part of this game that I've already mentioned, and that's
me too.
The secondary actions, how many there are, how many different ways they can interact with each other, and then kind of getting everything set up and building towards these huge turns where you can accomplish and combo all these different things together. I mean, you have favor points that you can allocate and take different actions. You have meditation, where you're laying your workers down and taking these different meditation actions. And then you even have luxury goods. Each different luxury good has its own special ability that you can use on a turn. So there's so many different ways that you can mix and match and combo things together. And I mentioned this in my before and after for the game, where it's kind of like a maze. After that first game, I felt like there was a maze of actions, and it was just trying to figure out, how do I navigate this maze to get those big turns accomplished?
Well, and I'm surprised you're saying that this is your favorite thing, especially playing against someone like me who's very AP prone. And so this is both good and bad. This is also my favorite things, because I reflect upon the different games that you and I have really enjoyed over the last year. And when you have games with multiple currencies, not just one thing, those are essentially the gears of the game. So trying to figure out, well, how do I twist this little gear to turn this bigger gear that interacts with this gear? How do I do all of that and get as many gears moving on my turn as possible? Yeah. And like Lisboa is another game that we did that with. You got influence, you have money, you have rubble, you have these different currencies that exist within the game that affect the actual gears. That being said, is if you are new to the game and you're looking at it, you don't have an appreciation for how these gears mesh together, whoa. Like mind blown, and it's going to take a little bit of effort to kind of work through the learning curve to figuring out how that works. So patience is a virtue for this game.
Well, and so I have a couple points to add to that. Number one, just because you have money or have a currency in the game, so if you have a lot of favor or a lot of meditation, doesn't mean you should spend it. I would say have a goal in mind and then start spending it to reach that goal. Number 2, having someone who's maybe, if you have someone who's played the game before, kind of guiding you through and pointing out the different things, I think that would help out a lot as well.
Yeah, exactly. So I guess why don't we move on? So those are all the meaty parts of a Euro game that maybe most of the audience wants to hear about. But I think the other part that they want to hear about is like, great, so I'm building up this mechanism, I'm building up this world within me and putting it all together. But is there any luck or anything random that's going to kind of start screwing with me?
So there's a couple random things that occur throughout the gameplay. There's a builder and a merchant, and depending on when those actions get taken, they're going to move to a different location. But they never are anything detrimental. They're only anything positive. When you go to where the merchant is, you're going to get some extra favor. He's going to move and kind of drop coins along the way that you can kind of pick up. So it's just something to be aware of and maybe take an opportunity. Oh, there's 4 coins at this location. I really wanted to do this for my strategy, but there's 4 coins.
But there's 4 coins, yeah, exactly. Or there's 2 favor, because sometimes if you go where the merchant is, you get 2 favor for going there. And sometimes you're just 1 favor short of doing something cool on your turn. Like, I don't really want to go there, but okay, I'll go there as well. The other thing that's a little bit random is there's those favor tiles. So as you move up the guild tracks, you can unlock the ability to acquire these favor tiles to put into your area to use as basically benefits for the rest of the game. And we found basically in our last game, there was 3 favor tiles that came out that we didn't like. Yeah. And neither one of us liked, so we just left them. They pretty much sat there the whole game, whereas we've had other games where we've loaded up on the favor tile. So it did dictate the flow of the game.
And that kind of randomness is pre-game.
Correct. Yeah.
So nothing really occurs throughout the game other than if someone takes one, a new random one is going to show up.
Correct. Yeah.
But that's kind of another minor random element to the game.
Right, but if you're going to be nitpicky, you could argue, well, there's nothing really available to me that works well for me. You take it and you got a flip that worked out really well. Yeah. Cool. But I don't really think in the amount that we played that was actually a real issue for us.
No. And for mitigating anything that mitigates this randomness, not really, because there isn't really anything that you need to mitigate. It's just the builder and the merchant really provide opportunities that might tempt you along the way. But other than that, there's nothing really that you need to worry about.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, so what's our next segment here?
I think we want to talk about strategy and tactics. So how much is there of each, and why don't we talk about that a little bit more? Because I think that you definitely, when you get into this game, and we were just touching this about the luck and random elements, you have to adapt to the game layout. And that's one thing, again, that I still do quite poorly, honestly, is the game layout is not just how the other player is playing, what they're choosing to do. So you have to have a real awareness of what the other guy is doing. Because sometimes when we talk about these efficiencies in this engine, there's one way to do things best. Once you start seeing someone exploiting a certain efficiency, you've got to get in the way of that. And so you're perhaps, say, for example, for you might be exploiting a trader strategy and you're really working it well. Yeah. Great strategy, but then I got to shift gears a little bit and say, you know what, I need to just kind of throw a wrench in that. Because
just make it a little bit less efficient.
Yeah, make it a little less efficient. Maybe, and that's maybe not what I want to do. Maybe I have a completely different strategy, but now I'm letting you run away with things, or vice versa, depending on what the strategy and the execution of that strategy is going to be.
I think this game has a good mix of both strategy and tactics, like you mentioned. I can sit down before we're going to play a game, like the night before, and I can think about, okay, what strategy do I want to try in this game? I'm going to try maybe a trader. I'm going to try maybe exploiting the builder, or maybe just really sell a lot of shirts, or something. I can come up with a kind of a concrete idea of what I want to do before I even set up the game or go into it. But then there's a lot of tactics, like you mentioned. How can I mess up my opponent a little bit? If I see they're delivering to one guild quite a bit, maybe I make a couple deliveries in there to kind of lessen their ability to deliver to them. So you're thinking about that. You're thinking about, well, when do I end the game? And this kind of goes back to that hidden money. So the one hidden element that you mentioned is almost a near perfect information. The one hidden element is how much money your opponent has, and if you're in this ability where you can trigger the end of the game, maybe I want to trigger it now because I think I'm ahead of my opponent, and I don't want him to get 3 extra deliveries to guilds in throughout the rest of the course of the game. So there's some tactics of how do I advance the game, especially along that river.
Oh, yeah.
He has no cotton.
Yeah.
I have 3 cotton. I'm going to make the boatman move, so then I get that extra bonus when the boatman moves through the river. So there's some good tactics here, not only when you want to trigger the end of the game, trigger different events, or trying to get into your opponent's way.
Yeah, I completely agree. For me, the pacing of the game is where the tactics really come into play. Where how can you take advantage of something and not allow the other person to get it at that particular moment in the game, but it still has to fit within your overall strategy. Because one thing that we talk about a lot is sometimes we start going down a strategic path and we're starting to build towards it, and then we're like, ooh, squirrel, and we run over there, we're like, oh, and we start getting distracted by things that are, some things are worth to getting distracted for, like, that actually have real significant gameplay impact, like for example screwing somebody else up, if it's more meaningful to screw them up than what you're hurting yourself. But you have to stay focused on what you want to achieve.
Definitely. So going on to variability and replayability for the game. The board setup is kind of static. Like, the main characters don't change. The goods that are going to be available don't change. The things that change are the notables that are going to be available throughout the course of the game. But that's all known when the game is set up, as well as those favor tiles, those 3 random ones that come up. And also in a 2 and 3 player game, there's going to be some blocking of kind of a neutral player that block different deliveries to the Emperor or to the guilds. That's kind of random, but pre-game randomness as well. And what guild orders are going to be available as the first delivery. That's another random setup. So I think there's a little bit of variability, but not a whole lot in the gameplay setup. And I think that kind of ties into what I said, where you can come up with a strategy before the game is even set up because there is low variability in the setup. Yeah,
and I'm going to say that the replayability from this game, in fact, comes from the strategic choices that the game presents itself throughout the gameplay, not through variable setup, not through different randomness in how the game is organized. Like, no, it doesn't have modular boards or different things. The replayability for me definitely comes from the strategic choices and options available within the game.
Yeah, there's a lot of different areas that you can try and exploit throughout the game, but one of the things that people might find themselves falling into is just playing the same game over and over again. But this is a game where the replayability is going to come from the players.
From the willingness to explore the board. So, like, one thing that we do after every game, we say, okay, here's the end of the game, here's the final score. What part of this board wasn't used today? And we'd go and look at, like, oh, what about this guy? And it was the trader. For the first, 3 or 4 times that we played this game, we always like, no, we really should start using this trader more. How come we haven't used him? Then one game, I think you went out and you dabbled, you used him once, like, ooh, use a trader. And now he's a very common strategy in the later plays. And so then similarly, we're looking at these different guys. We're like, well, how do we use this guy? How do we use this guy differently? And if you have that kind of approach to this game, then the replayability on this game is going to be huge. And even now, on your 8th play, my 6th play, only then do we start using some of these more effectively, those final
the luxury good
actions, which was really cool. So for me, the replayability again comes from the gameplay and strategic choices. And again, when people talk about, I got 5 ways to do the same thing, well, depending on what strategy you are, one game you might do it way 1, and the other game you might do it way 3. And so
it's all about which ways do you combo together. I'm gonna do the same 2 things, but I'm gonna do them a little bit differently.
Exactly.
This game. So let's touch on player count and play time. For us, like we mentioned, we only ever played it 2 player, and according to BGG, it says it plays best with 4. But we've had a really enjoyable time, I think, with the 2 player. I've heard actually other people say that 2 player is the least favorable player count.
Really? Well, they must not be playing with you then, Jeffrey, because I've really enjoyed it.
But I can kind of see how that could work, because that was the one comment after my before and after, was I didn't feel that there was a lot of player interaction, a lot of following the processing, because that's another aspect of the game, is you can follow somebody else's processing action. But I think it's up to the players, like we mentioned about that replayability, it's up to the players to decide, I'm going to go where you are so I can get a benefit. I'm going to put
Correct,
some different goods so I can follow the processing, or I'm going to go where I know you want to go so I get kicked out. So you can kind of fall, again, into that trap of playing two separate games and not really interacting. But I found a really enjoyable experience at two.
Exactly. And the other thing that we should point out, and we won't get into the details of it because it's not official, but the designer had sent us a 2-player variant to play. And I found that did an excellent job of... it really improved the 2-player experience for me, because it also forced that you couldn't go here and I couldn't go here and just ignore each other forever. It forced you to, it basically has a mechanism in which it kind of kicks your guys out for you. And I thought that was just awesome. Like, it really jumped up the game and made you have to react a little bit more to not only the other player, but this dummy player who's moving around the board.
And it was also very simple to incorporate it into the gameplay. Really good. The playtime for the game is advertised as 30 minutes per player on the box. I think that's a bit ambitious, especially like you had mentioned with the amount of AP of trying to mesh these different gears together. But we found about an average of 45 minutes.
Is that our average playtime?
Yeah.
And the other thing we should mention is your playtime is going to be a function of the efficiencies that are built within that game. Because we found that one game that we played went by super fast because you built up this engine and just flew to the finish. Whereas there's other times when you play and everyone's taking their time a little bit more. So the gameplay is going to drag out a little bit. So it depends on what type of engine that you've developed within that game and how efficiently you've exploited it.
So let's touch on player interaction. That we kind of talked a little bit about it already, touching on it here and there. I think, for me, the thing to highlight about this game is that it's really indirect player interaction. Nothing that I do is going to severely detriment you. I can't mess around with your resource production. I can't remove resources from you. The only thing that I can do is make things less efficient.
Well, no, you can severely upset me. And the reason why we've already talked about the worker placement interaction about that. But the one part that I want to get touch on here is when you make deliveries. When you make a delivery to the guild, there's already an identified delivery that has to happen next. There's a delivery that has to happen next. So sometimes you're working towards that, and then you scoop in and you make that delivery like, and then you're like, well, what am I going to do with this now? Because now I have no one to deliver that to. Right. Similarly, Akbar the Great, he's got only certain key things he wants, and so there's a little bit of a race to get a delivery into there. Then you got the notables that are on the river. This is more of an area control, area influence, because they have a stack of anywhere from 2 to 3 things that they want. And so you need to make deliveries there maybe before you, so I can deliver what I want before you try to deliver the same thing. And then you can also make double deliveries to try to sway the area influence into your favor so that you get the asymmetry. So those, because of that area influence mechanism in there, I'm going to say that there is this player interaction, kind of these small little races that can occur, especially, and you got to anticipate, is that guy really going to deliver there? And then once you get into the later game, when you start doing these massive trades and you can take cotton and somehow turn it into a statue, you're like, how did you do that? You know? So I found that the player interaction, there's what you're saying, more indirect, but there are definitely some moments in the game where you feel pressure to get something done. Yeah,
you aren't messing with your opponent's components. You're messing with the game state rather than messing with them. So you aren't directly I'm like taking away your cotton. Sure. But it's interesting. I just thought of it while you were saying that really all that interaction comes from those deliveries. Especially like when I see that like you make one delivery to a notable, I'm like, oh, maybe he wants that card. So I'm gonna jerry rig some combos here together so that I deliver it to that notable.
And this goes back to that comment we were making before about sometimes when you're trying to stick to your strategy, do you want to get distracted by that on this turn? Is that worthwhile for you to get distracted, or do you need to stick to what you're currently doing?
And then it's always weighing that, how much is it worth to me? How much do I lose to kind of try and hurt you?
Right.
Where's that balance?
And as it turns out, Jeffrey doesn't lose when he hurts me, so it's all good.
So you had already kind of touched on the game pacing a little bit. I definitely feel like there's that initial build-up of production, and then you kind of get the gears turning. You start laying the foundations for your strategy. So I feel like at the end of the game, I'm not doing the same thing I was at the beginning of the game. I'm just trying to capitalize on all the things that I did at the beginning of the game to set me up, especially if I'm going a more focused resource production.
Yeah.
I'm producing like 8 of one good now, as opposed to 2 at the beginning of the game.
Yeah.
And then I'm really capitalizing on that.
But even though you're producing more, anything left on the board is worth 0 to you at the end of the game. So there's this buildup of production, but there's also an opportunity in the game where you have to figure out, how do I get these pieces off the board and count as points? How do I make deliveries? And then what we mentioned before is, I think I'm winning. The current game state, I think I'm winning. I'm not sure, again, because the money's hidden. How do I end this? And so the last game we played, I was sitting there like, I think I'm close. Like, you and I were both like, we think we're close to each other. So I knew right then that I'm like, I have to finish this game as fast as possible, and there'll be a couple point difference. I was willing to take that risk. Unfortunately, I screwed up. I wasn't efficient enough, so the game lasted 1 round longer. That last round, I did nothing. I got 2 points. And how many points did you get?
I got
last
9 or something points.
Yeah, and so the last couple of rounds, you were able to make huge money deliveries to these guilds because you're already way up on the track, because I couldn't accelerate the game fast enough. So there's a real pulse to this game where you start building up, and then you have to make a decision when you want to pounce. But then that also, for me, goes into learning time. Because I think since this game has different pulses and pace to it, it really legitimately takes a full game to see how it works.
Yeah, and if you're trying to have a big turn every turn, if you're sitting there, how can I have a big turn this turn, and trying to figure out how to combo things together, and then the next turn you're doing the same thing, I think that'll add to the learning time and the length of the game. You kind of need to have a couple setup turns, and then you figure out, okay, this is my big turn, I'm going to deliver to 4 notables and get 4 cards this time.
Which was really impressive, by the way. That was really impressive. Yeah, but you got to build, so there's these little microwaves, these little pulses that exist in the game that you're building up so you can make a bigger turn.
All right, so we're going to jump into our closing remarks and rating for the game.
This is a first for me. I'm excited. I'm excited.
So start us off with a couple things you had to say first.
Yeah, so basically when I'm watching a review, and maybe you as well have this question, is who's this game intended for? And I think this is a game that's definitely going to be intended for people who want to learn and study a game. They'll be greatly rewarded with the time commitment that it takes to actually learn and get up the learning curve. And it may be difficult to actually find a group that is as committed to learning this game as maybe you and I have found with each other. And there's a reason why all of our games have been 2-player, because we were very committed to learning this game and experiencing this game together. And what's interesting is when I ever look at a game like this game on BGG right now has a heaviness rating of 4.34 out of 5, which is really heavy, right? And then you, just for an example or a comparison, you look at chess and it's got a rating of 3.75. So what's the difference here? I think that the actual same 3.75 that's given to chess, not because of the rules are difficult, it's because of the strategic ideas that go on. If we gave that same amount of heaviness weighting to Agra, then the additional 0.5 is basically the rules overburden of figuring out all the different elements within the game. But I find that this game is like chess. It's for people who really want to learn and appreciate and study a game. So be wary of comments, I'd have to say, on Board Game Geek, because you know your audience. If it's somebody who's played a game and they walked away from it, fine. And maybe not, they don't want to make that commitment, but look for people who have made the commitment before you, and then their decisions of whether they liked it or didn't like it.
Yeah, like I would say, I've played this game now 8 times, and I'm still discovering things after my 8th play.
Yeah.
Like, my thoughts on the game are really different after my 8th play than it was after my 1st or my 2nd or my 4th play of the game. And you can kind of go see my before and after, so you see what I thought before and after the very first play, and kind of see how it evolved when you hear my closing remarks, as well as go and watch our we did a how to play and a live playthrough of the game, and kind of see what our thoughts were after that game, because it is a game where the more you study, the more you think about the game, the more rewarded you're going to be. Like I said, there's that trap you can fall into of just doing the same thing every game because you're not thinking about the game.
Exactly. So why don't we're taking a page out of Heavy Cardboard's book here, I think, the next thing, and we both wrote our final thoughts on the game.
This is the first time I've actually written something out beforehand.
Okay, perfect. So why don't you go first?
So for me, Agra is a game about efficiency and temptation.
Ooh.
The large number number and variety of secondary actions you can take gives you the means for that efficiency, but also provides you with that temptation in the game. Just because you can take an action doesn't mean that you should, and figuring out when the right time is one of the most enjoyable aspects of the game. Agra is also a game of subtleties. You can easily find yourself trapped in a cycle of doing the same thing game after game, but there are interesting pockets of mechanisms that call out for you to exploit them if only you would listen.
Oh, nice.
This is a sandbox, and don't just let yourself keep building the same castle over and over again. I'm going to give this game a 6 out of 6. It has only gotten better the more I've played it, and every time it feels like I've peeled back another layer of decision making and discovered another element of the game to take into consideration.
Wow, that's high praise indeed,
Yeah.
Jeffrey. May I go?
Your turn.
Okay. So for me, if chess were to be reincarnated as a Euro game, it would be called Agra. The opening moves and how your opponent responds set the stage for nearly limitless strategic possibilities and decisions that would handsomely reward the player who takes the time to properly invest in the learning and discovery of this game. Although Agra is not a perfect information game like chess, the one hidden component, money, adds an exhilarating endgame acceleration and provides tension right to the end. The multiple currencies or gears of the game will at first appear arbitrary and burdensome when trying to make decisions and may even deter many a gamer from diving deeper into the game. For those who choose to make the time investment to learn and to discover how these gears mesh together will find themselves lost in a world of wonderful strategic choices instead of the world of some thinly veiled theme that is soon forgotten. To me, this is the perfect Euro. That you heard that right. I give it a 6 out of 6. I hesitated at first giving it a full 6, though, because of the difference between a 5 and a 6 for me has to do with future gaming experiences I anticipate I will have with this game. Frankly speaking, outside of playing with you, Jeffrey, I'm not sure when this game will hit the table again or in the future. My primary gaming partner is my wife. And as it stands today, the investment required to start feeling rewarded for your strategic decisions is an insurmountable hurdle for her to want to jump into this game at this time. Although this game may not get as many future plays as I desire, the gaming experiences it has already provided me with my 6 plays are memorable and have set the bar to a new standard that I'll expect from heavy Euros in the future. So I do recommend this game as a buy before you try. That's right, you heard me right. Buy before you try. To truly appreciate the game, one has to allow themselves the time and commitment to get lost in it to recognize its full potential. If this is not the type of commitment you want to give this game, then move along. This game may not be for you.
Cool.
Well, thanks a lot for having me, Jeffrey.
No worries.
I've immensely enjoyed it.
Well, and thank you guys for joining, and hopefully you stay tuned for the whole thing. And we'll see you guys next time.
Cheers. Thank you.